It was one of those mornings when the city felt alive, horns honking, heels clicking, and the aroma of roasted coffee floating through the crisp Chicago air. Ethan Cole stepped out of his black Bentley, phone in hand, his assistant trailing behind with a folder full of contracts. As the CEO of Cole Industries, he was used to moving fast. Decisions, meetings, deals, everything had a rhythm. He walked into the corner cafe he'd visited countless times before, barely noticing the new decor or the unfamiliar faces. His eyes stayed glued to his phone, scanning through stock updates and merger reports. When it was finally his turn, he ordered his usual espresso in a tone so calm and confident that it left no room for small talk. To him, this was just another morning, but fate had a different plan brewing behind that counter. Behind the counter stood Lily, the new cashier, trying her best to look composed. It was her third day on the job, and the rush hour felt like a storm she wasn't fully ready for. She'd dropped a cup earlier, burned her hand on the steamer, and now here was a man who looked like he owned half the city, staring at his phone like time was currency. When he tried to tap his platinum card on the machine, it didn't beep. He frowned, tried again, harder this time. Lily instinctively reached out, her tone soft but certain. "That's the wrong trick," she said with a small, almost teasing smile, gently flipping the card. The reader beeped immediately. For a second, she froze, wondering if she'd overstepped. Ethan finally looked up, surprised and a little amused. He wasn't used to being corrected, especially not by someone so unassuming. But there was something different about her. Her calm confidence cut through the morning chaos like a quiet melody. Their eyes met for a brief second, long enough for Ethan to notice the spark in hers. She didn't seem intimidated by his tailored suit or his expensive watch. In that moment, the billionaire businessman saw something refreshingly real, a reminder of a world beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. He took his coffee, nodded slightly, and walked out, but something about that encounter lingered. As he stepped back into his car, the city's noise faded for a moment. Ethan found himself replaying her words. "That's the wrong trick." He chuckled quietly, unsure why it stuck in his head. Maybe it was the way she said it, not as a criticism, but with effortless sincerity. For someone who spent his life surrounded by people who agreed with every word he said, that tiny moment of truth felt grounding. He didn't know her name, her story, or why she seemed to matter all of a sudden. But as he sipped his espresso and scrolled through the figures of a $200 million deal, one thought crossed his mind. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't wrong. The sun had barely shifted west when Ethan stepped into the sleek, glass-walled boardroom of Cole Industries. The skyline glittered behind him, a reminder of everything he had built. Cameras waited outside, investors whispered inside, and tension filled the air. This was the moment everyone had been preparing for, the $200 million merger that would take Cole Industries into global markets. Every slide, every sentence had been rehearsed to perfection. Yet as Ethan took his seat at the head of the long marble table, his mind wasn't fully there. Instead, he kept hearing that calm, almost playful voice. "That's the wrong trick." It was strange how one simple line from a stranger could echo louder than the chatter of businessmen and lawyers. As the presentation began, Ethan forced himself to focus. Graphs, profits, and projections filled the screen, numbers that looked flawless. But as his CFO spoke, a small detail caught his attention. Something about the revenue-sharing structure didn't sit right. The percentage split, the wording of one clause, it felt off. He blinked, leaned forward, and reread the slide. His instincts, sharpened over years of negotiations, began to buzz. The same instincts that had built his empire now whispered caution. His CFO continued explaining, unaware that Ethan's sharp gaze was dissecting every word on the page. The words, "that's the wrong trick," suddenly carried a new meaning, not about coffee, but about clarity, precision, and awareness. Halfway through the meeting, Ethan raised his hand, stopping the flow of discussion. The room fell silent. "Hold on," he said calmly but firmly. "There's something wrong here." The investors exchanged confused looks as Ethan took control of the presentation. He pointed to the merger clause, his tone growing colder with every word. This term, it gives the partner firm controlling interest after 3 fiscal years. That's not what we agreed on. A murmur spread through the room. The lead attorney flipped through his documents, face paling. Within minutes, it became clear a small wording adjustment had been slipped in during the final draft. If Ethan hadn't noticed, the company could have lost its majority control. The magnitude of the mistake hit everyone like a storm. The tension broke when Ethan leaned back in his chair, calm once again. His team quickly began rewriting the contract, this time under his direct supervision. The investors, initially shocked, now looked at him with newfound respect. "Good catch, Mr. Cole," one of them murmured. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He just stared at the contract, then smiled faintly. He knew exactly what had saved him, a single reminder to slow down and pay attention. When the deal was finally sealed, corrected and secure, Ethan walked out of the boardroom victorious. But for the first time, he didn't feel like celebrating. His thoughts were back at the cafe, at the girl who unknowingly changed the course of his company and reminded him that sometimes the smallest voices teach the biggest lessons.